early, 10:30, and it's a little bit past. Please come in from the foyer, you folks, and pay attention to our wonderful prelude. Thank you. Good morning. As we begin our service here today, please turn off your electronic devices. I also invite you to enjoy the chapel. You can see that it says back there on the thing, guided by love. That's the chapel. Some people wonder, we keep on mentioning that. It says there in the back of the sanctuary, and please note your joys and concerns in the book there. If you have little ones, we have a nursery downstairs. And after our service, I invite you to go downstairs to enjoy hospitality and to greet one another. Finally, please note the announcements in your order of service with the many ways to be engaged in this vibrant community. And in case you're new, an order of services that's what we call the program. My name is Jan Vanderhooft, and I am president of the board of trustees here at South Valley. At this time of the year, we really emphasize the weaving of the web of our community, although we try to do that all the time. The board is an integral part of that. All teams and committees connect through our board liaisons. In the web of community, that would be, I think, that makes us the warp, and you and the rest of the congregation the weft, if you know anything about weaving, which I barely learned from my wife not too long ago. Our board, in addition to myself, we have Ann Scarborough as vice president. Please wave there. The reason I'm introducing everybody today is, first off, we have a lot of them here. And secondly, it's someone for you to connect with for feedback. Cody Pace as treasurer, and he can't make it here today. Ann Hess as secretary, and she is in absentia. She has moved to Tennessee, but still a part of us, at least until we have new elections in May. I saw Sandra Roach here this morning. Sandra, there she is. Paul Carlson, I saw him here this morning. It seems like they're all on this side. I don't know what that means. And Lauren Quigley as a member at large. Lauren, are you here today? Laura's really helping us a lot with our spyglass groups. along with many of the others here. We are a covenantal church rather than a creedal church. That means that from the pulpit, we want words spoken personally and sincerely, but we have no required beliefs or creeds. Instead, our 7 principles guide us to covenant with each other, our mutual support. So in this same spirit, I give our traditional Sunday service greeting to all who enter here. These words were written by Reverend Melanie Morel Enzinger. I can never say this right. Enzinger. Come, whoever you are. You are welcome here. No matter your age, your size, the color of your eyes, your hair, your skin, you are welcome here. No matter how you came here, if you came alone or with others, you are welcome here. No matter whom you love, how you speak, or whatever your abilities, you are welcome here. You are welcome here whether you come with laughter in your heart or tears. You are welcome here. If you come here with an open mind, a loving heart, and willing hands, then you are indeed welcome here.
Good morning. Good morning. I come to you from a week with a very unusual group of people who are doing ministry all over this country. And because I am a knitter, I had to get yarn to express this experience. And because these people that I met who are doing ministries of creating places in Camden, New Jersey, where youth can go to have their hair fixed for free, and people who are doing ministry with women who have been incarcerated and helping them become a part of society, and especially a woman who came into our group wearing this fabulous coat, which I think inspired me not to wear black today. I bring her great love and ministry. And the woman who is doing a ministry for the incarcerated, who was my housemate, who told me about her experience with incarceration. And through the next couple of years, these people in my doctoral program are going to be part of you as well. And I hope to bring some of them, for their work was incredibly energizing for me this week. Something I have been thinking of that through the week, but from long before, is what is belonging and what is fitting in. And Jan just gave our opening words of welcome, that you are welcome here. Does anyone have a sense of belonging and fitting in as different? Maria does. So thank you. So instead of like, you're on the right track, trying to, I will tell you what I read by one of my favorite people who gets me on track, and that is Brené Brown. Do you know her? She does marvelous work on shame. And since I grew up in a shame society that shamed people, her work has been incredibly useful for me. And this is what she says about belonging and fitting in. That when we fit in, we try to change ourselves to be part of the group. And when we belong, we become more and more who we are, and that that we feel that we are part of the group as who we are, not that we have to make little adjustments of ourselves in shaving off that one part, but that we can truly live into who we are. And it is my hope for this community and my experience this week of my own struggle of not trying to fit in and become more like the person next to me, but trying to live into who I was and to feel a sense of belonging with a group of people who are very different from me. And so I invite you as we go into this service, and we'll be doing this more during our meditation, to breathe into who you are. And as your minister, I say, who you are is perfect for here. So if the person you greet next to you is a little different, you don't have to change yourself to become like that person who's next to you. You simply have to be who you are. So in the spirit of belonging, I invite you to greet one another. And then we will rise in body or spirit and sing, "Oh, freedom." And I know from experience that belonging is very closely connected with freedom. Let us greet one another.
please remain standing for the chalice lighting.
And we invited Victoria Newman-Seeger to help me light our chalice. Please join us in saying our chalice lighting words. We light this chalice for the Lord of love, for the light of truth, and for the energy of action. Thank you,
Good morning. My name is Scott Renshaw, and I'm here to talk about why I'm here. I've been at this pulpit to answer this question before in the past, so I'm sorry if I'm going to bore those of you who've heard it before. Many of you have not been here on previous occasions, and because I'm a writer, I can't help playing with semantics, so I realized that there might be many different ways to interpret that question. Am I here to tell you how it is I first came through those doors? Am I here to tell you why I kept coming through them after the first time? Or even why I'm standing up here right now at this moment being deliberately difficult about this task? So what I'm going to do is combine those things, telling parts of the story that might be familiar and parts that have evolved over time. Nearly 19 years ago, my wife Laura and I were new parents, wondering whether we should have a spiritual community in which to raise our baby boy in a state where labeling yourself as none of the above can be difficult for a child. I was an ex-Catholic who was pretty sure I didn't need church anymore, but as a parent, you do things for your family because that's what you do, so we came here. It felt like a good fit philosophically, but that was still an abstract idea. I figured I could keep coming for the greater good of the family unit, even though I wasn't really much of a joiner. What I gradually came to realize was that I did need a spiritual home, and not necessarily because I thought of myself as a particularly spiritual person. I'm a person with a monkey mind, and that mind spins around the many tasks I need to accomplish in a day, or a week, or a month. It's a perpetual checklist, and it can get exhausting. Having this place to come, even just one morning a week, became an opportunity to dial down that monkey mind, to breathe deeply, and think about ideas more profound than my checklist. I still find myself needing that contemplative time, but that doesn't necessarily explain completely why I'm still here, especially now that that baby boy we once brought in a carrier is a college student. What I've come to understand about this place is how many different needs it fulfills for different people. A place to raise children with messages of self-worth and affirmation, a place to heal after damaging experiences in other religious traditions when you need to hear that you're beloved rather than judged, a group of people to collaborate on direct political and social action, a supportive second family when challenges emerge, and so many more that I'm sure I haven't even considered because I've never had a particular life experience. I think I'm still here most of all for those reasons and for all of those people. Having a place to step outside of my narrow task-based week reminds me repeatedly that I want this place to be a haven for anyone who needs it for whatever reason. I think that's the reason I now gravitate towards roles here like welcoming for Sunday services, offering whatever help I can to those nervous first-timers like I was. I'm here because I feel the importance of a progressive faith community in the South Salt Lake Valley of Utah, and I'll do whatever I can to make sure that it's still here every Sunday for every wounded heart, or questing soul, or monkey mind. And I wanted to encourage anyone who hasn't done so yet to get one of these. For those who are relatively new, we're in the middle of our Stewardship Pledge Drive campaign. This yellow sheet, which is underneath the wonderful mural of the Four Seasons in the foyer, is a chance for you to make your pledges of time, talent, and treasures. We're having some groups that are part of our visioning process. We've had one already this week. There's another one tomorrow night at 6:30, and next Sunday after the service at 12:30. If you have any questions, if you're relatively new, you haven't been here since the last pledge drive, you can talk to one of the members of the Board of Trustees who introduced themselves at the beginning, or Stephen Carter, I see here. Who's Stephen? Stephen, can you raise your hand? Who's part of our stewardship campaign. I don't know if I see anyone else who's there, but please ask questions. You can ask me questions. We want you to help in whatever way you can to help make sure that this community continues to thrive. Thanks.
I would like to invite the young and young at heart to come up to the front. A couple of weeks ago, Liz sat right here and talked about the golden rule, and then she gave that funny story that talked about a different rule. What is the other rule?
Platinum.
The platinum rule. Okay, who can tell us about the platinum rule? Does anybody want to do that? Okay, thanks, Jonah.
Treat others how they want to be treated.
Right, treat others how they want to be treated. And what is the golden rule, just to remember, everyone, what was the golden rule?
Treat others the way you would like to be treated.
Okay, so today we are bringing in a mighty person's energy, and her name is Joan Trumpauer Mulholland. And in the 1960s, in order to travel, you had to get on, most people used buses. A lot of people used buses. And when you would travel through the South on a bus, when you got off the bus, there were different places for people of color and people who were white. And so the government said, we want to change that, or not everybody in the government, but the government did make a law to change that. But people in those places, in Alabama and Mississippi, they didn't want to change it. So I just want you to imagine how horrible how it would feel if you got off a bus and you really have to use the restroom, and you can see that there's this beautiful place where white people can go, but if you are a person of color, if you're an African American, and I imagine other ethnicities as well, needed to go to a place that looked really bad. And like that was dirty and didn't feel good, and you could see this other place. So people with that experience really wanted that law to happen. And so they got an idea. They said, we're going to get on buses, and we're going to travel through the South, and we're going to go in the place where we're not supposed to go, and see if we can change the law. And there was a young woman, who's right up there, you can see her face. That's a picture that was taken when she was 19, and right before she went into a prison for people on death row, where she was for 2 whole months. So she thought, I want to do something. And so I'm sure she might have had a lot of ideas herself, but she the people came to her who were experiencing it themselves, and they said, we need your help because you're white. And so she went on these buses And finally, she ended up in a prison, and she was a very strong woman. But she, at that time, many people who looked like me and looked like Joan Trumpauer had ideas for themselves. But looking back, the ideas that made really big change were these ideas that they followed into and made big change. So sometimes I think coming up, how many of you have heard of the March for Our Lives? How many of you out there? And that is being led by students, not by people my age. And I hope that a lot of you listen, because the students are the ones who are being hurt in schools. So we're going to be listening to their ideas. And I hope all of you, and families are welcome, join in the March for Our Lives on March 24th. So thank you all. I hope you keep thinking about that platinum rule. I know Liz is on it. Okay, thank you so much. We're going to sing you downstairs. Feel the earth under our feet. That earth that has supported us all the way down to its fiery core. And if we traveled upward, we would reach the heavens and those places where stars are made. I invite you to look back from that high perspective at this place. I invite you to look at yourself and all of who you are, all of what you bring to this community. I invite you to feel what this community is about, and that is that all of you, all of the parts of you, everything that you are, belongs. And with that feeling of belonging and of not needing to change anything in order to be a part of this, of what is happening here, of this community and of the world, I invite you into a minute of silence. In this silence, we give thanks for our toes and our fingers, for the whole of us, for all that we are. now I invite you to extend that feeling of belonging as you listen to the breathing. Listen for the heartbeats of those around you and feel how much they belong without changing anything that they belong. Let us hold together this light of belonging and take this into our lives. Amen. May it be so.
In the spirit of serving our wider community, for March and April, we will be supporting the work that First Unitarian Church is doing to provide sanctuary and basic needs for Vicky Chavez and her 2 daughters while she seeks asylum here through the judicial system. If deported, Vicky fears for her life due to economic and social upheaval and violence in her home country. Please give generously. Will you join me now in saying the words printed in the order of service for our offering? We are this church. We are its hands, its heart, its voice. Together we share the wealth of this community and sustain it with our gifts. South Valley Sanctuary Program, and South Valley, thank you for your gifts.
In extension of our embracing meditation, Joan Trumpauer extended out of the community in which she lived and felt that everyone who lived in this country belonged here. She, as you can see in the photograph, in her photograph, she was just kind of a regular looking person, a rather lovely young woman who, when she was a child, she went into a part of the town that her grandmother lived in that she had been told not to go into. And that was the part of town where the African Americans lived. And when she went in there and she realized that actually the people who were living there were kind of afraid of her and her sister, and she saw the school that looked so different from the school that was in her grandmother's part of town, she experienced this big change. And I know many of you out there have experienced that change that in some religions they call conversion. That is, all of a sudden the way you see the world shifts. And Joan she wanted to do everything that she could to make changes that would affect people, especially the African Americans of this country. And her family was very conservative, and many of us have also experienced that time when our shift did not mesh with our family very well. And she was kind of thrown out of her family. And so she was not having much contact with them when she got on those buses. And they did not want her to get on a bus. They did not want her to be. It was this woman at 19 who was in a prison that was for those on death row and who was strip searched and other things. And I heard her story in the fall, and then 2 weeks ago, Deborah Dean came to me and said, "Do you know Joan Trumpauer of Mulholland? I met her when she came through our town as a freedom rider." We've got to listen to that story. Deborah.
First of all, I want to sound human and not like Cecil B. DeMille or the father himself. So I'm going to try to fix this. Okay, do I sound okay?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm human. We talk about race. You think you know it, but it's often made into a myth. I'm having a little trouble there. Okay, now it works. I'm on, I work now. But about race, we think we know it. And we say, I know everything I need to know about that. But it's often mythologized. It's not always what the media and others might say. It's not what human beings really are when you think about it. And I admit for your perusal, the case of one, Nathan Bedford Forrest. He was a self-made millionaire. He arose from poverty with much of his money made buying and selling human beings. He was a slave trader. And he was semi-literate, but his brilliant tactics and strategies as the most successful cavalry commander of the Civil War are still taught in military academies at West Point, places like that. He's celebrated by the South and condemned by the North. And he may have been involved in a war crime where maybe 100 Union troops that had already surrendered got massacred, okay? We're not sure about that, but some people implicate him like that. But we do know he killed in combat 31 Union soldiers during the Civil War. But after the war, it was amazing because constantly former Union soldiers would come and visit him, and they want to shake his hand. And there was obviously a lot going on between the two, constant strain. And he was a racist, no doubt about it, he was a racist. He founded the Ku Klux Klan. He started that. But later, he ordered it disbanded. And he also later made a remarkable speech, because in 1875, he was invited to address a meeting of the Independent Order of Pallbearers. And that was an early black civil rights organization in Memphis, Tennessee. I'm from near there. And at their big thing, 4th of July barbecue, that was the biggest thing they did that year. And he was invited. Forrest was told by many whites, hey, don't go there. Don't accept it. But he went anyway. And just before he spoke, he was presented with a bouquet of flowers by one Miss Flora Lewis. And she was the daughter of one of the members of the pallbearers. And here's Forrest's speech. First, he proposed that blacks do everything they're capable of. We were born on the same soil, breathe the same air. We live in the same land. Why then can we not live as brothers? Forrest said in his speech. I'll say that when the war broke out, I felt it my duty to stand by my people. When the time came, I did the best I could. And I don't believe I flickered. I came here with the jeers of some white people who think what I'm doing, make me being here is wrong. But I believe that I can exert some influence and do much to assist the people in strengthening fraternal relations, and I shall do in all my power to bring about peace. We have but one flag, one country. Let us stand together. We may differ in color, but not in sentiment. Now, after that speech, Forrest thanked Miss Lewis for the bouquet of flowers, and then he kissed her on the cheek. And this type of familiarity between the races, in public especially, was almost unheard of at the time. And I want to apologize, sorry to all the Star Trek fans out there. Captain Kirk and Lieutenant Uhura did not make the first public interracial kiss. But isn't it wonderful that we live in a world where people can redeem and people can change? In World War I, many black men joined a black regiment in the segregated U.S. Army. They were called the Harlem Hellfighters. Now, they served with distinction. They got mutilated badly in the trenches. And what was their main motivation? They wanted to show the whites that we are real men, worthy of being equal in society. They thought by doing this, they would be accepted finally, have citizen membership. They were used to fighting together and being armed in the service of their country. They had a different attitude. But later, in 1919, after the war, a boy innocently was swimming in an area reserved for whites in Chicago, Illinois. This started a race riot, killing 64 and injuring hundreds. Another one in the Midwest about a week later. This time it killed 300 people. So conflict's not new, but 300 people because somebody crossed the racial barrier, the racial line. And the U.S. President Woodrow Wilson, he was an Eastern liberal by any definition of the time, constantly joined in repeated racial jokes he made while in the White House. And closer in time is U.S. Senator Robert Byrd. He's a Democrat from West Virginia. In 1944, Byrd, he was a Ku Klux Klan exalted cyclops. He wrote, "I shall never fight in the armed service with a Negro by my side. Brother, I would die 1,000 deaths and see Old Glory trampled in the dirt, never to rise again, than to see this beloved land of ours become degraded by race mongrels. A throwback to the blackest specimen from the wilds." Now that was said by a U.S. Senator. Now, here's the world I came to. I'm small, and I go to a ditch on the farm where we live, and there are 2 black kids fishing for crawdads. I join them, learning the mysteries and joys of a kid in that activity. I noticed that their feet are a different color from mine. And no, it's not dirt or anything, it's just what is. And it was a fun occasion for me, and I thought they were cool kids, and I left, basically. Now, why can't I go into this bathroom and not the other one? I asked people. Well, that one's for Negroes. And this water fountain, don't be alone with the N-words, that's what was used. They carry knives and will hurt you. My town had 2 parallel main streets. One was mostly white only, the signs on the doors said. The other for blacks, and they were only about 100 feet apart. Time for school and polio shots. We go to the doctor's office, the building has 2 sides. They're a mirror image, this one and this one. The waiting room, the exam rooms, one was for white, the other was for black. But the lab in the back, it was shared, don't tell anybody. A car carrying blacks had the words outlaws on it. And I was told, well, that's just some N-words. It's just what they do. One day, some of my parents' friends came over, and they dragged us all, the kids and everybody, into the theater. And this theater had a colored section in the balcony, and it had a partition to separate the blacks and whites. Now, I'm tall enough just to peer over that, and I see the people over there. And I asked my parents, why is this fence here? You know, what's going on? And they say, well, it's to keep us separate. Well, why do we need to be separate? Well, because we want them there. Well, why do we want them there? And it says, because that's the way we want it. Now sit down. And that's exactly what I was told, to sit down. But here's the surprise. The lights went down and the movie came on. And it was a movie called Imitation of Life. And it was about 2 women, one black, the other white, and how they shared life over the decades. And how their children did too. Now the black kid wanted to be white. And you almost whine, you know, it's kind of a rhetorical thing. Now I had an older sister that asked questions about this in the following week. The answers were on the order of, well, you have a sink full of clear water, and if you put just 1 drop of ink in it, the whole sink turns dark. That's the attitude. This was the Southern Society, and it was also the National Society. And sometimes we as Southerners get sensitive that some of the Yankee North, they want a free ride. we get the rap, but they don't. Well, they were part of it too. We were a little more overt about it. And we stand guilty as charged, but we had a lot of company. And at the time, you were expected to act proper. You were to dress a certain way, you were to think a certain way. Sunday school and scouts told you how to be good. Others told you how to be bad. Now in 9th grade, I'm going to be this big intellectual, okay? And I asked the teacher, do you believe in evolution? And he gives me this look. And he says, hey, do you go to church? And the local Presbyterian minister where I went to church, when asking a teenage chum, you know how teenagers talk. I admit I was a teenager. Okay. And I asked him about something. I forgot what it was. And he says, well, you on the final day of judgment, you're going to find out. And that was his attitude, real authoritarian. An adult says, years ago, everyone used to belong to the Ku Klux Klan. Hey, they did good. They'd find a man who drank away the money and didn't take care of his kids, and they'd go have a talk with him. And what they meant, they'd go beat the crap out of him. And it was like I was there, but I wasn't really, I didn't fit this stuff, even as a kid. Now, blacks try to go to school, but whites don't like this. A white woman is holding a son, and she's bending over to her 5-year-old, and she screams. Kid was about this tall. Tell them we don't want to integrate. Army troops are in the streets. Troops are in the classrooms. My parents dissed on the fact that a 5-year-old doesn't know what integrate means. An adult relative goes to a new supermarket grand opening, comes back, and she gripes that the N-words are crowding in hoping to get something free. Well, didn't she go there hoping for a free prize or something? Come on. Okay. The drugstores, all of them, everyone had a soda fountain and a lunch counter, or a lunch counter. They're the same. A counter with stools, fast food for that time, before McDonald's, before the drive-through KFC next door, all of that. You went to the drugstore, you sat on the stool, ordered a burger or a hot dog or whatever it was. Okay. Now, how many have seen the movie It's a Wonderful Life? Nearly a lot of people. Okay. Now, that's like where the young George Bailey, he works there and he sells ice cream to the girl. You remember the scene? That's what it was. Suddenly, nearly all of these were pulled out. And the owners would say, you know, I don't want the government telling me who I can serve and who I can't. If they're clean, it's okay if they come in here, but don't tell me who I can serve and who I can't. And all the drugstores pulled out their soda fountains, pulled out their lunch counters. Happened overnight. But there was one drugstore that kept theirs. It happened to be owned by a Jewish man. I wonder, you know, what was going there. You know, right after World War II. I don't know. I was too small to ask the real questions. I'm on a ferry. We're the only white people on it. The others are black, and they're going to a demonstration or a meeting or something. And there's one white girl there. She's older than me, and hey, she's kind of safe. And I talked to her. It's probably the first woman I had the courage to even speak to. And I'm drawn to her at a time in my life you're just feeling things you don't understand, you don't have the words for it. And, you know, in fact, I'll be honest, I was kind of busy congratulating myself for having the courage to talk to her. That's how old I was at the time. And I asked her, well, why are you there with them? And she says, because I was in jail. Why were you there? And she says, for nothing. Nothing but acting like everybody else, acting like an American. Why did you do that? Hey, you're white. You're one of us. Well, I am, she said. So why? Because I'm white. I'm a Christian. Well, isn't everyone a Christian? Well, the Constitution says, she goes on, and we leave. The ferry goes across the Mississippi River. We all leave. And her name was Joan. And she was different. Different like I felt a lot of times. And if this is on TV, it must be important. And it is exciting in the way that only a teenager can appreciate sometimes. The adults around me don't like it. The government doesn't like it, yet it happens. Later on TV, I'll learn of the lunch counter sit-ins, and I see, hey, that's her. Hey, I know her. And I see the way that the people are treating them. There's like bullies crowding around the counter, coming up behind people on the lunch counter, and they're pouring ketchup and sugar and stuff on the people sitting at the counter. They're shoving. They're acting like bullies. How could they do her like that? How could they do anybody else like that? And I watch the adults do this. I watch the adults do this to each other. I know now that this was social change, nothing less than an insurrection. But the people in charge did not want to go the way of the race riots and the deaths that they had in the 1920s. So they chose the way of what Gandhi did in India, nonviolent resistance. If one got knocked down, another one would rise up and take their place and keep going. They were upending society. And I think many on a human level understood this. Many people in this had fought in World War II. And coming out of this, where their very lives had been stretched out and put on the line, and probably some of the most significant events of their life, they knew that they were as good as anyone. And they had memories also of fighting the Nazis and remembered what they stood for. Then there was a reaction. Their buses were burned. Smoke was billowing out of the shattered windows. They were beaten, fire hose, dogs. And this was done by the police. The Klan was there. And they even bombed a church, shattering the windows, throwing the glass out to the street. People died. Some blacks were even talking of guerrilla warfare. And one mayor of a town said he visited a local Klan wizard. And he took a revolver and twisted it in his stomach and says, "Don't do anything to tear up our town." This was an insurrection movement, upending the established order, daily life. Now, some liberals don't like this because this isn't part of the myth. The myth of peaceful action versus violence. But this was just as much a part of that as the rest of it. But one black person who would know, he later told me of a group called the Deacons. And they were a black armed bodyguard that protected the marchers. They let the word out to the Klan and others that, look, we're working for the same rights that you have, nothing more. We will be peaceful when we can, but if you try to kill us, we'll be there to get you too. And this stopped a lot of the violent things that would have happened otherwise. Social change can be costly at times. And I'm telling you all this stuff to let you know that this is serious business, and it's been mythologized with, from the 60s. Oh, it's great and everything, but people were worried about dying. People were worrying about what they believed the world that they knew was being upended and swept away. And it kind of was on many fronts. But I'm talking about civil rights today. That's it. And Now we come back to Joan, the woman in the picture here. Now I met her again recently at a talk she did locally here, and she's one who yet walks with certainty. It's amazing almost. She walks with certainty when she thinks about what she did back then. No doubt in her mind. She doesn't remember me, and how could she? I mean, we saw eye to eye at the time, but now I've grown a foot or more, okay? And the more I looked at, and now I have to look down at her. She's a short woman, I'd say about this high. But I look up to her in spirit. It just radiates from this woman. It's almost like she's ready to go again. And because of her, where I felt alone before, where I felt I didn't belong before, I knew forever that I had a choice. And not everyone that mattered felt the same. Not everyone who mattered looked the same. When it came later, the things through my teen years, the first dating, the Vietnam, the draft, 100 other things in my life that I have met since, I'm different. And I like it. It's okay for me to be me. And what about Senator Robert Byrd, the racist we met earlier? As a U.S. Senator, he filibustered and voted against the Civil Rights Act of 1964. He voted against the Voting Rights Act of 1965. He changed. Now there are more than 50 buildings named after him. Bridges, community centers, government buildings, industrial parks. And they're named after Beard. And he said his clan association was the worst mistake of my life. When he died, none other than President Obama said of him, "America has lost the voice of principle and reason." Isn't it great that we live in a world where we can change and be better than yesterday? I can turn off now.
We are grateful for Deborah's presence here, and I want to give a little Yankee PS to this, because all of my family are Yankees, and I believe that if you think that nothing was going on in the North, and that nothing continues to go on in the North, and that this is a Southern problem, I invite you to read some history books. And my dear friend, who is a pastor in Salt Lake, Pastor Bonetta, she said to me, and she's African American, she said, "Patty, for the most part, I prefer white Southerners because you know where you stand." So I think sometimes when we tell these stories from the Civil Rights Movement and this holy story that Deborah is speaking of transformation, of her own personal transformation, that we really forget the whole picture. And I invite you into that. And I also, and with great gratitude to you, Deborah, thank you. Thank you. And I also invite you to rise in body or spirit, and we will sing number 348, Guide My Feet.
Thank you.
As individuals, may we do that work. May we search for our own belonging in this world. And may we give that sense of belonging to others. May we understand the great belonging of this world. Let us listen deeply to the voices that are coming up now. And I see Jenica out there who can tell us a lot about what is happening. Jenica, do you mind saying? Sorry. Jenica is very involved with the Black Lives Matter movement, which is another example of voices coming up and leadership that we need to listen to. We are here to listen to the voices that are happening at this time, just as Joan Trumpauer. And she went through such danger, and I'm sure if you asked her, she'd say those were the best times of her life. And I invite you into finding the best times of your life, that they are in front of you, and that you will be led to those times through listening to what is needed in this broken and hurting world. That there are voices that will call you to leaps of faith, to getting out of your comfort zone. Because as I look back on camping in Standing Rock, Lou goes, that was one of the best times of your life, wasn't it? And it's true, it was. And I invite you to listen to those voices, because if you are feeling a lack of meaning, there is meaning out there. You just need to listen. Amen, and may it be so. service, before we extinguish the chalice, I invite any of you who are visiting, who would like to introduce yourselves, to do so at this time. And you don't have to.